It was supposed to be a quiet night in the emergency room. The kind of night where nurses finally get a moment to breathe. The lights were dim, the hallway was calm, and for a brief moment, everything felt under control. But at exactly 2:47 a.m., everything changed. The first patient arrived suddenly. A middle-aged man was rushed in by paramedics, barely conscious, his face pale as if life was slowly leaving him. Nurses quickly gathered around, but before anyone could stabilize him, the second alarm sounded. Another patient. A young woman badly injured in a car accident was rushed straight into the emergency room. She was in pain, scared, and slipping in and out of awareness. The room, which was calm just seconds ago, was now filling with urgency. And before anyone could process what was happening, the third call came in. A child, only 8 years old, struggling to breathe, terrified, his small body fighting for every breath as he was carried inside. In less than 5 minutes, the emergency room went from quiet to chaos. 3 critical patients, 3 different emergencies, and the worst part, only one nurse was immediately available to respond. That nurse was Aisha. She had no time to think, no time to panic, no time to wait for help. She just moved. The moment all 3 patients were inside the emergency room, the atmosphere completely changed. The calm night was gone. Now there were voices everywhere. People running, nurses calling for equipment, machines beeping faster than before. The entire room felt like it was breathing panic. Aisha stood in the middle of it all. For a split second, even she looked around. 3 patients, 3 emergencies, 1 room, and not enough hands. But she didn't stop. She went to the first patient, the man who arrived earlier. He was still barely conscious, his breathing weak and uneven. She placed her focus completely on him for just a moment, trying to steady his condition while speaking calmly, even though everything around her was falling apart. "Stay with me," she said softly. "You're going to be okay." Before she could finish, she heard a cry from the second patient, the young woman from the accident. She was slipping away. Her pain was getting worse, and her condition was changing quickly. Another nurse tried to help her, but it wasn't enough. Aisha immediately moved across the room. She didn't walk. She rushed, but just as she reached her, the child screamed. The 8-year-old boy was struggling to breathe even more now. His small hands were shaking. His eyes were wide with fear, looking at everyone as if asking for help without words. And in that moment, Aisha had to make a decision that no one in that room wanted to make. Who do you help first when everyone is dying at the same time? She looked at all 3 patients, and for the first time that night, the room went completely silent inside her mind. Not outside. Inside. Because this was the moment where every second mattered, and one wrong choice could cost a life. The room was no longer just busy. It was divided into 3 fights for survival happening at the same time. Aisha stood in the center again. For a few seconds, she didn't move, not because she was confused, but because she was calculating. She finally turned toward the child first. The 8-year-old was now struggling even more. His small body was shaking, and every breath looked like it might be his last. Aisha knelt beside him immediately. She spoke softly, trying to calm him even though her own heart was racing. "Look at me," she said. "You are not alone. Stay with me, okay?" The child nodded slightly, scared but listening. She adjusted his position carefully, making it easier for him to breathe. Every second mattered here. Every small action counted. Behind her, the young woman from the accident cried out in pain again. Her condition was getting worse by the minute. Another nurse tried to stabilize her, but it wasn't enough. And the man The first patient. His breathing was becoming weaker. 3 people, 3 lives slipping at the same time. Aisha stood up quickly. She moved back to the woman next. The room felt louder now. Machines were beeping. People were calling for help. But she focused only on the patient in front of her. "Stay with me," she said again, this time firmer. The woman grabbed her hand tightly, terrified. She was fading fast, and everyone could feel it. Aisha didn't panic. She asked for immediate help from another nurse and guided them step by step, making sure nothing was delayed. Her voice stayed calm even when everything else was chaos. Then suddenly, the monitor from the first patient changed. The man's condition dropped sharply. Someone shouted his name. But Aisha couldn't be in 3 places at once. For the first time that night, even the experienced staff looked worried. Because they all realized the same thing. One nurse was trying to hold 3 lives together. And time was breaking her apart. Aisha stopped for half a second. Then she made her decision. Not based on fear, but on instinct. And she turned back toward the man. Aisha rushed back to the first patient. The man was barely holding on now. His breathing was fading, slower with every second. The sound of the monitor had changed. It was no longer steady. It was breaking. The kind of sound that makes everyone in the room stop. "Stay with me. Stay with me," she repeated, her voice calm but urgent. Her hands moved quickly, confidently, like they had done this 1,000 times before. But tonight was different. Tonight there was no team surrounding her, no extra support, just her and the ticking seconds. Behind her, the child started gasping again, a sharp, desperate sound. Aisha closed her eyes for a split second, not in fear, but to focus. She couldn't lose any of them. Not tonight. She turned her head slightly and called out clear instructions to another nurse across the room, guiding them step by step to help the child. Her voice carried control, even when everything felt out of control. "Stay with him. Don't let him panic. I'm coming back." Then she went back to the man. The room felt smaller now, tighter, like everything was closing in. Suddenly, the monitor dropped again. A long, terrifying sound filled the room. For a moment, it felt like it was over. One of the staff members whispered, "We're losing him." But Aisha didn't step back. She leaned in, focused, determined. "Not yet," she said under her breath. Her movements became sharper, faster, more precise. Every second now carried weight. Every action meant the difference between life and loss. And then, a small change, barely noticeable at first. The sound shifted. The monitor flickered. Another second passed. And then suddenly, a steady rhythm returned. Not strong, but alive. The room froze. No one spoke. Because they all knew what just happened. She had pulled him back, but there was no time to celebrate. Aisha turned immediately. The young woman was still slipping away. The child was still struggling to breathe. 2 more lives, still hanging, still waiting. And Aisha was already moving again. The chaos didn't stop, but something had changed. Aisha moved toward the young woman again. Her condition was still critical. Her breathing was uneven, her body weak, her grip slowly loosening. "You're not giving up," Aisha said softly, holding her hand tighter. This time, there was no hesitation. Everything she had already done, every decision, every second, had led to this moment. She guided the team around her with calm authority. No panic, no wasted movement, just focus. Seconds passed, then more, and slowly. The woman's breathing began to stabilize. Not perfect, but enough. Enough to hold on. Across the room, the child finally took a deeper breath. A real one this time. His body relaxed slightly, like he had been fighting something invisible. And finally, won. The nurse beside him looked up, almost in disbelief. "He's okay." 3 words, but they meant everything. Aisha stood still for a moment, not because she was tired, but because her body was finally catching up to what just happened. 3 patients, 3 lives, all seconds away from being lost, and somehow still here, alive. The room slowly grew quieter. Machines returned to steady sounds. Voices softened. The storm was over. A doctor walked in, looking around, confused. "What happened here?" he asked. No one answered immediately, because no one could explain it in simple words. One nurse finally spoke. "She didn't stop." That was it. That was the only explanation. Aisha didn't say anything. She didn't look for praise. She didn't try to explain what she just did. She simply adjusted a patient's blanket, checked one last monitor, and quietly stepped back. Like it was just another shift, but it wasn't, because that night, everyone in that room saw something they wouldn't forget. Not a miracle, not luck, but what happens when skill, instinct, and courage come together at the exact moment they are needed most. And somewhere in that hospital, 3 families would wake up the next morning, not knowing how close they came to losing everything, not knowing a single nurse stood between life and goodbye. And Aisha? She walked out of that shift like she always did, silent, calm, unnoticed by the world, but unforgettable to the ones who were there, because sometimes the biggest life-saving moments don't make noise, they just save lives. If this story touched you, take a second to like this video, and if you believe real heroes deserve to be seen, subscribe for more untold nursing stories.